Jesus, have all of me, have all of me, have all of me, Lord. Chapter 5, verse 7. So Joshua circumcised the sons whom he raised up in their place, for they were uncircumcised because they had not been circumcised on the way. And so it was, when they had finished circumcising all the people, that they stayed in their places in the camp until they were healed. I think that's wise. And then the Lord said to Joshua, and this is God speaking now, "This day I have rolled away the reproach of Egypt from you." Therefore the name of the place was called Rolling Away, Gilgal, to this day. I don't know if you actually have ever put these two things together in verses 7 through 9. But needless to say, and I want to be careful how I say this in a mixed room, it is amazing how uncircumcising the wilderness makes you. Nobody in the wilderness seemed to be circumcised. Interesting, in Scripture, more than twice more in Scripture, God will speak about circumcising the heart than he will any other part of the body. And certainly the most tender part of the human flesh for a man to have something like a flint knife then at you, it couldn't be a pleasant experience. It's a very, very painful experience. And the purpose of it ultimately is to take that part that was protected and expose it. The part that would be the most tender. But beloved, I need to tell you, this isn't just a chapter for men. To be honest, I think that we'd rather the women read this chapter than us, in that sense. But the wilderness has this way of sealing up your heart because we get hurt there. And when we get hurt there, we don't feel anything. We'd rather be numb than feel pain. Because we feel like survival means that if we could just sort of protect ourselves, we can make it through. But that's not really living. And that really isn't victory. And that certainly isn't abundant life. So we get hurt and we go, you know what, forget it. I'm going to wall this thing up. And our hearts then kind of seal up in a way that in the wilderness, God goes, look at, if we're going to cross the river and we're going to really see the victory God has ordained, you're going to have to let God cut that thing open again. What's going to happen when God cuts open our hearts? It's going to feel pain. And did you notice God did not let them go into following him into the battle until that healed? For some of you, I already know God's doing this. But he's going to cut that thing open because what he really wants is he's like, look at, hard-hearted people are not to enter into the battle. Because if so, we'd be more interested in winning the battle than we would the person. And we'd rather win. And you watch people do this. We can all do it. Where we get caught up in some kind of argument where all we want to do is win the argument. Even to someone we love, and even if we have to hurt the person we love, that's less important at the moment than just winning. And that just seems so crazy to me. Because at that moment, we're less about feeling and opening ourselves up and being tender, and we're more just about trying to get some kind of crazy victory. But I remind you, the victory is the Lord's. And in this particular chapter, I want you to recognize as we bring this around now, we're in our final chapter of this, God really wants us to emerge victoriously. And that's the E in grace, is to emerge victoriously. But to emerge means we have to let God cut us out. We can't just box ourselves in and wall ourselves up and go, I am not going to let the world touch me. Because unfortunately, when you walk in the wilderness, you know who you get hurt by more? It's actually each other. I mean, think it through. It wasn't like the greatest threats most of the time were actually outside of the camp. The bigger threats were always inside the camp, pointing us back to Egypt, saying, who died and made you boss? Trying to raise up people and saying, we're going to do this instead of you. Hey, those things all happen inside the camp. And when you watch those things happen inside the camp, you start getting fearful of fellowship. And that is a real tragedy. So you say, well, forget it. I'm not going to be part of a church. Forget it. I'm not going to be a part of a thing like that because I don't want to be around people who could hurt me. I'll go to the clubs and the bars. Yeah, like that's going to help you. And the only difference is you just kind of expect it to happen there. But if my only success is in fully following, I cannot fully follow God with a closed heart. And God really, really wants us today to know that he has got a victory for every one of us, and he wants to carry us over. But for that to happen, we have to be willing to let him open our hearts again. And you're like, well, could they get hurt? I'll be honest with you, they could very well get hurt. But I'll be honest, if you've not felt anything and you feel pain for the first time, at least you know you're alive. And that is really huge.